I call Julian Genter. This is a 5-minute call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on behalf of the Green Party. We will be supporting this bill. I think the best way to characterise it is too little, too late. A move by the government slightly in the right direction, and we're very happy to see that. But fundamentally, it is not going to be enough to deal with the out-of-control housing crisis in Auckland, which is posing great risks to our economy, to the stability of our financial sector, and also to our ability to ensure that every New Zealander has that fundamental right of having access to a warm, healthy, dry home. And not just any home, not a home in the middle of nowhere, but a home where they can access education and jobs and recreation as part of a neighborhood. So I've heard the government members admit that there is a housing crisis in Auckland, and my colleague Dr. Russell Norman outlined just how much house prices have increased in recent years under the national government. I'd say what the situation in Auckland demonstrates is that National has really lost touch with ordinary New Zealanders, and that they're failing to lead on the issues that are most important to New Zealand. They're particularly failing to deal with the long-term issues. So they're very much, how can we please voters in the short term, but absolutely failing to deal with the long-term issues like climate change and inequality, both of which are affected by housing policy and by tax policy. So government members have mentioned that they'd like to hear solutions. So I'd like to outline the Green Party's solutions to the housing crisis, which would also help reduce the growing wealth inequality in New Zealand, and also reduce climate pollution, which is essential if we want to survive and thrive in the future. It's very, very simple. Firstly, we have to deal with the demand issue. I know that the government likes to pretend it's entirely an issue of supply, but if you listen to the Reserve Bank, the OECD, Westpac, any number of bank economists, they will admit that it is a demand problem. It is not just the Green Party recommending that we deal with the demand problem. We know it's a demand problem because 41% of new house sales in Auckland are to investors, not first-time home buyers. So when you have nearly half of your house sales to investors, there's clearly a demand problem. And as the Reserve Bank pointed out, what we need to do is close the tax loopholes on housing. There is no reason why income from house price increases shouldn't be treated like any other income. People who go out there and earn a paycheck pay tax on their earnings. If you are very, very rich and you can buy and sell houses at your whim and make hundreds of thousands of dollars in short periods of time, why shouldn't you pay tax just like the people out there working hard 40-hour weeks for their paychecks? Probably more than 40-hour weeks, really. So close the tax loophole on housing. That's a recommendation from the OECD, the Reserve Bank, Westpac, and the Green Party's been calling for it for a very, very long time. My colleague pointed out the impact of capital flowing in from overseas, and particularly from mainland China. Making that statement is not a statement of xenophobia. We're not opposed to immigration. We're just acknowledging that if you've got capital flowing in from overseas and there's no limit on who can purchase property here in New Zealand, it has an impact on the value of house prices. And again, we know this because in Auckland now we've got the ratio of median house price to income is now at 8. There's only about 6 or 7 cities in the world where it's higher than that. The highest is Hong Kong, where it's 12-1. Virtually every city where the ratio is higher is one that's seeing massive inflows from China. So that would be like Sydney, London, Vancouver, Singapore. And all of them have taken steps to try and curb the negative impact of these capital inflows on their housing markets. And it's absolutely legitimate to do that. As an immigrant to New Zealand, I can say the Green Party is not against immigration. But if you're going to buy property here in New Zealand, you should be a resident or citizen. And that's what the Green Party would ensure. There's a lack of protection for renters here in New Zealand, and that impacts the demand. So one of the reasons why there's such huge pressure to buy homes is because you have no security of tenure, and there's no requirement for landlords to ensure that the places they're renting out are actually warm, healthy, dry, energy efficient. And if we fix that problem, it affects demands at both sides. So it gets out those lazy landlords who are just sitting there waiting for capital capital gains who aren't willing to look after their properties. They get out of the market, and it takes the pressure off from people looking to buy houses because they have more security renting. There is a supply issue, but of course the government's approach of deregulating and reducing environmental protection and planning in greenfields isn't going to solve the housing affordability problem. It just means that we're going to end up with a lot of low-value housing far away from jobs, which is going to increase pollution. It's going to increase costs to households. The Productivity Commission draft report made a number of recommendations that reduce the barriers to a compact city. The Green Party has been advocating for those measures for a very, very long time. The Green Party has the smart, innovative solutions that are going to deliver for New Zealand affordable housing, action on climate change, a happier, healthier lifestyle, and it's going to be better for our economy.